Hello, everyone, and good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Partnerships and Placemaking in the time of COVID, part of the Boston Design Week 2021. My name is Michael Nichols, Executive Director of the Esplanade Association, and I'm delighted to have you join us this evening for what should be a dynamic panel with a fantastic group of speakers and an absolute first-class moderator of the type that you'll be very pleased to have bring you through this evening. I want to begin tonight first with a land acknowledgement. After all, as place managers, the Esplanade Association, this is something that's very important to us. We start this meeting remembering the Esplanade, and much of its surrounding land was originally inhabited by the Massachusetts tribe along the banks of the Quinnipiac River. We look to honor and respect these 64 acres despite a painful history that preceded our gathering here today. We at EA are still learning more about this history so that we may pay tribute today and in our work going forward with our partners at DCR and many other stakeholders. And so tonight, we are appreciative to bring you all together to discuss placemaking in the time of COVID-19, and in particularly the fantastic Hatched Breaking Through the Silence event that occurred on the Esplanade this past winter. It's my great pleasure to introduce tonight Catherine Morris to moderate this evening's panel. Catherine is a mother, an entrepreneur, a visionary, and in my opinion, a force of nature who works at the intersection of arts, culture, and creative placemaking. For over 20 years, Catherine has spent her time and energy producing shows, as well as mobilizing and engaging local audiences to experience the arts. The Boston Art and Music Soul, or BAMS Fest, is a nonprofit organization that breaks down racial and social barriers to the arts, music, and culture for communities and artists of color across Greater Boston. Since 2015, the organization has employed, supported, and presented over 400 local artists and creative entrepreneurs, activated over 25 public spaces, including the Esplanade, and has attracted over 13,000 attendees. Catherine herself is an alumna of Temple University's School of Sport, Tourism, and Hospitality Management in Philly, and has received her Master's of Science from Simmons University here in Boston. It's Catherine's hope that BAMS Fest becomes a pipeline to Boston's arts and culture ecosystem and our creative economy in a manner that minimizes implicit bias, closes the racial wealth gap, inspires hope, and positively impacts the livelihood of future creatives. And if you know Catherine, you know she's well on her way. It's my great pleasure to introduce our friend, Catherine Morris, to lead you through tonight's panel.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I just, it's always amazing to hear introductions. So thank you so much. It is an honor.
Every word.
Sure. Truly want to welcome everyone. I hope you're entering this space excited and open-minded and willing to be introduced to some amazing people. Before we get started, we're going to treat this like home, right? So there's a little bit of ground rules, some etiquette, some things you have to do to get ready for this panel. One, please expect that your cameras and microphones will stay off. We want to give all of our panelists the amount of time and respect that they need to share their stories and their experiences. If you have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to share your questions. We will have time at the end for about 15 minutes towards about the 7:30 mark, where certain questions will be selected for the panelists. Feel free to use the chat feature also to alert staff of any technical difficulties or to share any thoughts or ideas or praise with all panelists and attendees. And please know that this webinar is being recorded, so please be nice and be kind, but also share your inspirations. That's always important. And my hope also is that if you notice that there is a live transcript or closed captioning. So once this is done, you can absolutely go back and see it again and share it with others. So before we get started, we want to hear from you. So we want to have a little quick poll, a little pulse check. We wanted to know, did you or someone you know go to see Hatched Breaking Through the Silence at the DCR Hatch Shell during its live period from January 22nd to the 21st? So go ahead and answer that, and then we'll reveal the results. and go from there and kick it off and get ready to get into some really good conversation. Wow, impressive. Yes, I see you, Ron. Yes, Hatch was awesome. All right, I think we have everybody. Yes, okay, just want to make sure. Looks like majority of you, or half and half, have and have not. I encourage you, there are relived experiences. Please don't miss out. It is worth every waking moment to be inspired by lights and all different colors of light. So please, when you get a moment, absolutely relive it. So let's get into introductions to our wonderful panelists. To kick us off, I'd like to introduce you to Allison McRae, who is the Capital Projects Manager at the Esplanade Association, where she aims to bring organization, adaptability, effective communication to projects that enhance and maintain the Charles River Esplanade, from playground renovations to installations and activations like Hatched. Allison has devoted her career to managing projects that improve access to public services, starting with community-built playgrounds during her 2 years at Kaboom, then managing the design and development of apps that deliver national and local news during her 4 years at the National Public Radio headquarters. Allison is inspired by efforts that dream up, uncover, and reclaim resources for the benefit of all. She is a native New Yorker with degrees in sociology and French language and literature from the University of Virginia. When she's not on the Esplanade, she can be found running trails at the Arnold Arboretum or collecting seashells on the Cape. Allison, welcome.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you everyone for being here for Boston Design Week. We're just so excited to get going with the panel.
Awesome. All right. Up next, a colleague of mine, Maria Finkelmeyer, is the artistic director and composer of Hatched and the founder and CEO of MF Dynamics. Named a one-woman dynamo by the Boston Globe and Boston's Best 2018 Creative Catalyst by the Improper Bostonian, Maria Finkelmeyer is a percussionist, composer, public artist, educator, arts entrepreneur, superwoman, mom, the list goes on. Maria has created large-scale multimedia events in public spaces from Cincinnati to northern Sweden, with several locations in Boston, including Fenway Park, Green Monster, Charlestown Navy Yard, Edison Power Plant, and Harvard's Arnold Arboretum. She's the owner of MF Dynamics and associate professor at Berklee College of Music. Welcome, Maria.
Hello, it's so lovely to see you in this virtual space. Thanks for having me, and it's a joy to relive Hatched, and I appreciate everyone's time tonight.
Absolutely. All right, next we have Pamela Hirsch. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this correctly. Is the technical director of Hatched and founder of First Visuals, a multidisciplinary artist originally from Mexico. Pamela focuses on the intersection of art and technology. She has collaborated with and worked with producers, musicians, dancers, aiming to represent their distinct sounds and personalities, as well as nonprofits, art galleries, museums, and commercial clients. She creates visual content that includes projection mapping installations, photography, music videos, lyric videos, and live show content. Without further ado, Pamela Hirsch.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I'm honored to be here, and you did pronounce it very well. Thank you.
2 points. All right, thank you. And rounding us out, of course, the queen herself, Anita Morrison Matra, and please also correct me if I have it wrong, is an independent consultant with 15 years of experience in organizational leadership and nonprofit management. Anita is invested in working with organizations and leadership professionals across sectors to empower communities, strengthen local partnerships, engage stakeholders, build coalitions, identify advocacy areas, and become sustainable. Her recent and current clients include Mass Cultural Council, Roxbury Cultural District, Now and There, and the Elliott School of Fine and Applied Arts. Anita holds a Bachelor of Science from Florida Agricultural Mechanical University and is currently finishing a Master of Arts in Urban and Environmental Policy and Planning from Tufts University. Welcome, Anita. Oh, wait a minute, you're on mute. I gotta hear you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all. I look forward to this conversation.
Oh, likewise. So now all queens are here and present. This is awesome. I want to kick this off very simply. We'll start with the easy stuff. How did the Esplanade Association, so Allison, I'm going to start with you. How did the Esplanade Association come to commission the piece with Maria and MF Dynamics? And how did your teams leverage new and existing partnerships to bring Hatch to life?
Yeah, thank you so much, Catherine. And hi, everyone. I love seeing all of our faces up here. Oh, gosh. Well, Hatched really began with a seed that was planted in 2019 as the Esplanade Association was looking forward to our 20th anniversary of partnership with the Department of Conservation and Recreation, which occurred this year in February. So we were giving ourselves a nice long runway to plan a wonderful 20th anniversary celebration. And we did this brainstorming exercise, which was the picture that came up with me of all those Post-it notes up on the wall. We had a million ideas of what we might be able to do to celebrate. And then, of course, made it through 2019. And just a few weeks after that, COVID came and all those Post-it notes just blew away in that fierce wind of COVID. And the idea that sort of carried us through of how we could maybe still manage to celebrate our 20th anniversary was waiting until the winter, waiting until we saw how things were going to land and how things would turn out for everyone in our communities. But then to try to activate a space in the park, to bring people to the park in a way that was going to be safe and family friendly, and that was just going to provide light and a community gathering place despite everything that was happening in 2020. And so we continued to move through 2020 thinking about how can we actually pull this off? What could we even do? Where would it even be? And through a wonderful program with the Boston Foundation, we came into this term of placemaking. And it really kicked off for us these thoughts of using a space on the Esplanade that would allow enough room for people to gather, that would be so specific to the site itself that you couldn't replicate this celebration anywhere else, that would really put the Esplanade at the forefront and allow us to highlight that partnership with DCR and the great work that we've done together over the last 20 years. And so from there through the fall in 2020, we started reaching out to some local arts groups and arts entrepreneurs to see what we could put together. All we really had was a budget and a dream and a location. And in came Maria and her incredible team with this beautiful concept of a way to activate the Hatch Shell in a way that had that site-specific nature that would give us that light and that joy and be able to highlight these wonderful partnerships in a space that would normally have seen the biggest crowds of the year on the Esplanade over 4th of July and over so many great musical events and programming events. And in 2020, it had just been dark all year. So to be able to put together this coalition, this crew of partnerships to bring light to that space was just so incredible and so exciting. And I'm sure Maria can speak more about how MF Dynamics came into that and the partnerships that you guys built alongside us and DCR to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really fun to relive. And if attendees can't tell, we really liked working together. There's a lot of positive energy in this, even this virtual space. And I think I felt that as soon as I I started to interface with Allison. And when you think about placemaking, a really important component was, you just said, oh, we had a budget and a dream, but you actually fed me so much more than that, that actually enabled the creative process, but also the feasibility process to really flourish. And after those first emails, phone calls, I had two things I had to think about. Well, one, my creative brain went crazy because the Hatch Shell, the music, the history, the future, right? It's actually this space that kind of encompasses culture. And it has, this great memory. Everyone has a memory of some sort of engagement on the Esplanade, but there's also so much potential. And I love those types of spaces. And you also actually gave a lot of what I call parameters, for lack of a better word, but kind of desires, like, okay, we have COVID, it has to be socially distanced, it has to, security, we want all gear to be on the Hatch Shell, which that might be a really simple ask, but it's huge in terms of creating something that's technical and creating something that's over like a long period of time. This idea that, I come into the kind of public art space from both the sonic and visual realm. So I was like, and it's the Hatch Shell. So the first thing I think I said to you, Allison, I was like, music.
Yep. Which hadn't even been on our radar. And it was such a great, total amazing addition. Hatch wouldn't be what it is without the musical element.
Totally. And I think so. I was like, I wanted to nudge that feasibility exercise a little bit. So we kind of came up with this. Well, we don't want speakers out because we don't want to have a festival environment. So what does that look like? So you really gave me a lot in those first conversations to step back and again, split my brain in two, creatively go and then logistically go. And honestly, the logistics had to happen first because I had to make sure it was possible. And what I realized very early on is that, projectors, outdoor, winter, yikes. These are things like Pamela's probably cringing right now because you don't really have this technical gear outdoors. And when I've interfaced with the Hatch in the past, we've put projectors in the field, or when you see the Boston Pops, there's a lot of rigging out and we're, can we do the rigging in? So that's when I first interfaced with Pamela saying, okay, can you help me here? Let's talk about feasibility. And then also interfacing with Luminarts. It's a nonprofit that's based in New England, run by Lynn Burke, and she's really passionate about bringing light art into the New England space and really elevating New England artists in this field that is just flourishing internationally. And she kind of says, okay, how can I help, bring this art to our neighborhoods? So I called Lynn and I said, okay, we have this budget, but we want this to can we stretch it? How can we get people involved? And Lynn is like, let's do it. And so she kind of brought on Epson. And honestly, Allison and everyone, that kind of gave me the oomph, okay, we can do this. We have some people on board. Pamela and I sat down. Pamela did a lot of math to decide, can the projectors actually hit the amphitheater from the stage, as well as I called around to a lot of folks in the production field saying, how do I get weather controlled gear outdoors securely for a long period of time? So I had to go through this checklist first, and I had to hold myself back creatively because I had to say, make sure it can happen before you really dive into the creative process and getting those partners on board. You, DCR, Luminarts, Epson, our team started to manifest.
Yeah.
That's when the creative energy kind of really went full power.
Yeah, those first meetings that we had on the Esplanade with all of us just standing there in front of the Hatch Shell, oh my gosh, how are we gonna do this?
Yeah, I know. And what's interesting is these partnerships have flourished even since Hatched, right? So, this team you see here, we kind of all knew each other in some way, shape, or form. We came together for Hatched, and now I know Pamela and Anita really kept this collaborative energy, these partnerships running well past the Hatched. And I'd love to hear more about how things have been going in the placemaking world since Hatched as well.
Well, we had the opportunity to work on this amazing project called Nubian Nights, and that was in collaboration with Anita. She was our point person, and it was with Roxbury Cultural District and Jazz Urbane. And I feel like it was a very successful, it was 3 weeks. So those weekends were magical for the transformation of the space. So another, placemaking, and it's just amazing how light and sound can just create this opportunity to just, be in the same place, but it's completely transformed. So, it's extraordinary. And I feel like that is something that really adds value to, to one stay. What do you think, Anita?
Yes, I think it really echoes the importance of the ways in which organizations collaborate. Both the Esplanade, Mike Nichols and I were a part of the Boston Foundation's Place Leadership Network. And so really thinking outside the box about how we are leading and stewarding the combination of arts, culture, economic development, diversity in spaces, and how we are sharing those resources. So this is, a prime example of how, two different organizations on two different parts of the city really talk to each other to think about how it can be in the best interest of the folks, and really getting people outdoors and into spaces that they hadn't been in.
That totally makes sense. And what's been amazing to hear is that, once the ball got rolling, momentum started to happen. All the ideas, all the ideation, the confidence, the just, bouncing off of each other arrived at this beautiful artistic design, but also knowing the technical difficulties I'm sure they've had to go into it. I'm very curious, I'm sure probably for the audience, for Maria and Pamela, what were any other additional limitations or parameters you had to deal with for Hatch? I'm sure there was more, but are there any other ones that you didn't talk about that you'd like to talk about?
I mean, parameters, yeah, in the terms of, also just at the seed of it, like, what is this thing, right? Once you kind of actually have the tech in place, which is, okay, we know we need 3 projectors, we need a computing system, they all need to talk to each other, we're going to stream the music through headphones, tick, 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 which all of that is quite a heavy lift. I said that very quickly, but then we have to decide what is the thing, right? And that is, what do we put up there? How do we engage? What stories do we tell? And I can go into creative in a little bit, but I think something that we talked about a lot is literally the length. Okay, it's 15 minutes because this parameter is, it's winter and there's an international pandemic. Like,
oh yes.
So we want people to move through the space. We don't want people to sit, although wonderful people did bring picnics, which it was incredible to
on
see
the snow.
These rugged New Englanders bringing picnics out and their kids, making snowmen. And but we kind of wanted this kind of revolving and something that people, we're not used to going to places, right? So you could come at 6:30 or you can come at 8:15 and still see the piece and feel like you're engaged with it. And we can meet people where they were in this idea of leaving the house and engaging with art. So where that's kind of bleeds into creative, those are still parameters that we set up when creating the piece. How do people move through the space and how does the experience encourage that movement? Pamela, I mean, we could talk about a system that you designed for 3 hours.
Yeah, it was, I feel like the biggest challenge, or at least the thing that had me more worried, or not worried, but my attention was a lot on it, was the weather. So so we had our good friend Karim, the one help us design the enclosures that we had on stage. So it had this, system of the thermostat, and when it hit above certain temperature, then the heating system hits, and the other way around. So it was like a complex set of boxes that we were building at Maria's studio, from wiring things to putting the installation, everything. So it was also very informative. So we learned a lot, and they worked, which that had us super happy. We trusted that it was going to work, but once you see it after so much work, it was wonderful. That's the thing that allowed for the projection to really happen. And then just like something like the streaming, like the music had to start at 5 p.m. sharp. So figure out a way that the video also starts at 5 p.m. sharp, because it was in a different system. So it's like the computer on its own and then the streaming service. So it's like, those little things that, when Maria mentioned it, was like, yeah, easy, we do this. But then once you see it, it's like, so how? Let me think about it again. So just these very little things. At the end, the whole system was not very, complicated, but every single thing took, a great deal of work to figure out and to make it happen. And at the end, I feel like when we have parameters and these limitations is when we get more creative. And I feel like this is that's a wonderful feeling. Like for me, I really like the challenge and then figuring things out. If the less options we have, the better. So yeah,
Understood.
that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect
Definitely.
project on that one. And, we think of the Esplanade as being, oh, it's in downtown Boston, but once you get out there, it's kind of the wilderness. There's like a hawk flying by, there's no Wi-Fi. It was like seeing you guys put those boxes together, to me, as the person like helping to bring all the people who know the answers to these questions to be able to put it all together was just incredible. And I think I heard one of you say on site, like, has this ever been done before? Just the way that all of that technology was fitting so beautifully into those boxes to be able to heat it to the right temperature, to cool it to the right temperature, to have the miniature computers keep the Wi-Fi going, to keep everything connected, was just incredible. And then DCR to have their staff there to support us and to help, like, one of the guys was like, oh, we have this piece of lumber in the back that you can use to leverage under the projector to get it at the perfect angle. And it was this snowball effect of feeling those partnerships and friendships form on the Hatch Shell stage in a space that had been so empty, but it still held all the echoes of all the history of performances and projects having happened in that space. You could just sort of feel all the layers there while we were there all together, making something new happen, which was just so fun to be a part of.
What's so amazing to hear from all of you, and even just looking at my screen, is you all are change makers, right? Leading unapologetically. And I'm going to go a little bit off script because I know we have our questions, but I'm in my moment, so I'm going to claim this space at this time. But I think, one, let me give you your grace and your virtual flowers, because I know that this work is a lot. There's a lot of sweat equity. There is sacrifice. There is energy. There are tireless days. There's all these different kind of things. And with that being said, I'm curious to hear from all of you about what does, basically dropping the mic, if you will, at the Hatch Shell. What legacy do you want to leave with this project? Because that's huge for strong women leading the charge, quite honestly. I'm gonna open that question up to all of you about this idea of legacy leaving, if you will, knowing that, women take charge. They own it, they take up space. We know how to coordinate things and put a nice little bow on it and our little spin, but there's legacy with that when you leave your fingerprint on something that future generations benefit from. So I want to open that up to all of you queens here.
Uh-oh, who's going first? I guess I'll start. Well, one of the things that we talked about almost as soon as we got on site was if you stand facing the Hatch Shell, you can see all these names wrapping around it, names of the 100 most famous composers at the time that the Hatch Shell decided to put those names up there. And they had asked all of these people in the music industry and professors and experts in Boston, like, what names should we put on the shell? And they've slowly added over the years, but the last names were added still many years ago. And of all the 57 or 58 names on there, only one of them is a woman. So when we got there on that first day and looked around and saw that we were all women and that more than half of Maria's creative team would be women identifying, to be able to leave that mark in that space and know that if we put all of our names on there, we would change the ratio quite a bit. That was really, really, really cool. I think as a young woman, just sort of entering this industry and seeing such incredible women bringing their creative energy to the forefront and working together, and bringing more women along with us all together was just really great.
I love it.
Yeah, I also think that, you know, I mean, this word has been said so many times, unprecedented, but in so many ways, what Alison mentioned, you know, this hadn't happened before. We were in the middle of pandemic where there was nothing going on, you know, for people. So many people, like the 30,000-40,000 people that came over, they are gonna remember this. So this is also like, you know, leaving footprints in people's lives during this, you know, hard time. And everything, like the way that Maria thought it and designed it, just having, you know, represent all the instruments inside, having the instruments be like the, you know, playing the shell. I think that it was, wow, I lost my thought for a moment. Continue, Maria, please.
Yeah, I think Pamela and I, we got deep. Like, we were at the Hatch Shell at like 11 p.m. You know, we got intimate with the space and this idea that we were creating something. And you know, we were, Pamela, myself, and Jane Long, who is my studio manager and also led the internal project management. Those three of us plus some DCR folks. And this idea that we kind of really pushed, and then we got to create a moment for people like that. I will live off that feeling and that understanding for a long time. And I'm super appreciative of it. And I just think that that's the essence of Pamela and I, our association with this project is just this great pride and appreciation to offer, you know, these skills that we've attained over many years, to offer it during this specific time when we ourselves are feeling it too. You know, we're definitely not immune to any of the isolated feelings, the languish, the need for human connection. So to be able to kind of give this amazing platform by the Esplanade Association and DCR and all the partners was life-changing for me. Pamela, I believe you agree, but we both felt this was a major moment in our lives. Additionally, I just feel like it's this moment where, and I've said this in a couple of talks, like everyone we called, I was like, okay, here's what we're thinking. And Allison too, I know with the sponsors, and everyone's like, yes, before we could finish our sentence. And I know in a pre-pandemic world, you know, we put this together 3 months, like that's crazy. And this idea that everyone came together and said yes and believed in the risk taking, right? Believed that together we can make this work. I just hope that we keep that with us, that feeling of, I knew I couldn't do it alone. Like Allison, you reached out, I'm like, okay, yep, here's the dozen people that I know I'm going to need, and I need them now, and we're going to do it together. Like, you know, I just hope we continue that as we kind of open up and feel each other again and get into this, you know, create this new normal. That's the mic drop I hope we feel. Like, yes to taking risk, yes to taking risk together. And again, it's led, like Anita then said, okay, like, let's drop the mic again. Let's drop it in Roxbury. Kind of, what can we do together? You know, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? And that's kind of the legacy I hope we build as a team. Thanks for all those kind words too, Catherine. It is felt deeply. Thank you.
Oh, without a doubt. And this actually segues a little bit into, I want to get a little more into Nubian Nights, because I think coming to Roxbury, knowing that it is the bedrock, the heartbeats of creative impulses and imagination. Anita, with Nubian Nights, you know, what is the mic drop? What is the legacy to be had?
Yes, you know, we're a major business district. We are a transportation hub. It is an arts and cultural district, but we do have a history of strategic disinvestment. The Bolin building in and of itself, previously the Ferdinand building, was a building that stayed dormant, stayed empty for the longest period of time. And I think it was really about a reclaiming, and not only a reclaiming of space, but being intentional about the collaboration, right? That we really didn't, it wasn't Roxbury Cultural District. It was the partnership. It was for mutual benefit throughout the district, very much for Jazz Urbane. They had to push back their deadline. increasing the visibility of Nubian Gallery and Black Market, and also making sure that folks know that some of the cafes and small restaurants are still open and things are still moving. We had support of the Main Streets District. It was really thinking outside of the box about how we are ushering ourselves into this new phase, particularly for the district, and thinking about how there's been a changeover in gatekeepers and how we're pushing things forward and really linking arms in a different way. And hopefully that means mutual benefit and collective responsibility. And, really focusing on not displacing folks, but really supporting people to stay in the district.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, Nubian Nights, I took my son and just pointing out, just like, whoa, that's just, it was great, right? So it's, it's for everybody. I just, and thinking about Hatch, thinking about Nubian Nights, thinking about this almost new normal of experiences now, right? Curious to hear from all of you all about what does this mean about the future of arts, the art scene? Like, what does this look like, knowing that the unprecedented is now the precedence, essentially? And how important are, partnerships, in shaping the future of Boston's art scene?
I love this question. May I go first? All right. So, my friends, over the past year, you have a lot of creative minds that have had to totally learn new skill sets, just recreate their whole lives, right? Like, as someone who's used to being on stage in front of people, everything in my calendar got canceled within a week. I taught, and then all of my classes online. But I'm coming out of this in this hopeful attitude because I'm much more agile using a lot of new technologies. I've also taught myself new technologies, and I'm just one. And I know Pamela too, like the problem solving that we've had to go through with Hatched and just in general during this pandemic time has been kind of, just again, new skill sets built. So the Boston community is just itching with creatives ready to come out and make something for you. So all of the, district leaders, organizations, people that are kind of the gatekeepers to creating these opportunities, just remember that we're here and we're ready. And the impact I believe Hatched made was economically, and people came down to the Esplanade, people engaged with the studio, and Nubian Nights, or excuse me, not the studio, the park, the space, people engaged with the city. And Nubian Nights, I was just in tears sometimes, just listening to community chatter and thinking about people kind of, what are they doing next? What are they doing before? People are starting to feel comfortable in our spaces again. So I just, I want to preach that there's all of these artists that have gained new knowledge over this year, and we're ready to present it, and we're ready to be creative and to bring this energy into the space. And now we have new ways. I'm so excited about rear projection on windows, or about projection on amphitheaters and sound scores, and how do instruments look like when they're projected, and how to create all these multisensory things that has been escalated because of the pandemic. And again, you go down the list of any artist in Boston and they would have the same exact story. So I'm just here to say, hire us, create the opportunities. We're ready, and we're ready to kind of partner with you in this new and exciting way.
Thank you, Maria. Pamela?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that we experienced how outdoor projection can gather people. It doesn't matter how cold it is, and it doesn't matter how hot it is. Like in the summer, outdoor projections, the only limitation in the summer is that the sun sets later, so we have a little bit less of time, but still I feel like partnering with organizations or museums, galleries, and then taking their art or what they have, taking it outside, like venues, like the idea of Jazz Urbane, that's what they eventually want to do, just have the shows also projected on the windows in the bowling buildings. So for people that that can't get in, that if the event sold out, so just still just present everything outdoors. So I think that that's going to be a big new normal in the entertainment industry and arts. So yeah, and I feel like Boston has so much potential, like beautiful buildings, so much opportunity to do this kind of work, and I feel like there's more people doing it every time. And I think that the community of artists who we are getting together to do this kind of work is it's wonderful to see. I really like it.
Thank you. Anita, I know you got something to say. Come on, join the conversation.
Definitely. Something I think that we've been pushed to think about how we're collaborating with artists in a different way, and really seeking out folks that have inspiration in places that we wouldn't thought of before. There are some projects that we've been approached with potential projects that are an outgrowth of this innovation, and also thinking about things on a different timeline, and really bringing an element of freedom to the work that I don't think was there before. A lot of people were really, all of the people on this panel, they, there's all of these restrictions, and, people are thinking about outdoor restaurants and cafes in a different way. Like we see them popping up everywhere. We could have used that space the same way the year before last. So it's really about pushing these boundaries. And we're so happy that we get to do that with the artists, creatives, and small businesses throughout the district.
Ooh, y'all are bringing the heat. Allison, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think that flexibility that we all mentioned, that every project is going to have restrictions and parameters on it that you have to work within. But the flexibility to come up with new things, to reach out to new people, to see how you can piece things together within that shape that's created in a way that's still surprising and fresh and new. And that takes into account the new normal that we're in now, like you all said, of using more outdoor spaces, of breaking the boundaries of having to have these reserved spaces inside that can only fit so many people at a time, to be able to break those barriers and boundaries down and democratize the art experience, that more people can be out there, considering in a pandemic that we brought probably over 30,000 people to the Hatch Shell in a way that was safe and was family friendly and respectful to the neighbors. There weren't strobe lights for the people driving down Storrow Drive to get distracted by. There wasn't that out loud music experience for neighbors to get upset with. That someone could be there with their family or on a socially distanced date and just enjoy their time out there, whether they were listening to it on their headphones or eavesdropping on someone else's music. Just finding these ways to make art more of a communal experience while still allowing for that private experience, I think will be something that we see more and more of. And multisensory experiences too. I think moving away from art that you can only experience through one sense, whether it's only visual or only audio or only tactile, but for people to be outside and to smell the snow in the air and feel the breeze and hear the cars on Storrow or just hear the music, that you really get the sense of place becoming a part of the art piece more than you would just for an art piece hanging on the wall. I think we'll see more and more of, and parks as being spaces for those art opportunities, more than just a sculpture of somebody standing in bronze there in the park, that there's so many more opportunities that we can bring to use these spaces creatively together.
That is, from all of you all, super deep and insightful. And I hope for all the panelists out there, all the attendees out there, really take heed to what these women, these queens, are saying, because there's a lot built into creating space, making space, taking up space, for the benefit of people, their sanity, their humanity, their humility, all those things. And with that, I do want to do a little rapid fire really quick to close this out, because I love you all. I'm going to say a sentence and you fill in with the last word. Okay, y'all ready? Drum roll. Okay, here we go. If we do not protect our spaces, they will blank.
Not protect us.
Disappear.
Disappear was my first thought too, which is why Pamela and I work together a lot.
They will be used against us.
Wow. Wow. Space is a human right. It is what we make it and how we shape it and how it benefits us and our children and our grandparents, everybody. So the next time you see these women, the Esplanade, anyone who is trying to re-envision, reimagine, or change the way things have been done to create space or experiences for people, it's my hope that you learn from all these women tonight that it takes a village to make that happen. So we're going to transition to our Q&A because there's a lot of questions, but we only got time for so many. So I'm going to start with this first one. As society begins to open up after COVID, what aspect of placemaking, placekeeping do you think will improve the most after a year like the one we've had or lived?
I can take that first, I guess. So I think that the permitting process and getting through some of the hoops you have to jump through, I think that folks will be a little bit more open to alternative programming outdoors and what that looks like. I think that it will also be easier to partner with smaller businesses and establishments for mutual benefit. That's what I think will happen.
I love that. And I hope we have DCR folks here listening in on that permitting bit. If they're not here,
We need you.
I said that. But yes, that would be incredible if we could just see that there are so many more opportunities to these spaces to think creatively and to move within them in ways that we haven't done before. I think the concept of like winter outdoor living that you see in a lot of Scandinavian countries and increasingly in Canada, that we can have outdoor spaces still be cherished by everyone in the winter time, to get people outside, to not be afraid of the cold, and to let ourselves be reinvigorated by that changing of the seasons, I hope is something that we'll also continue to see.
Awesome. Anyone else? Because I got another question. All right, keep it
Bring
going.
it
For all of you, Boston seems to be opening up after a long reputation of cultural conservatism and exclusivity. We can go down the list. What do you think is driving that openness, and how do we do more of that, if you will?
I think that the global, movement is what is just making people think about it twice before just going into automatic mode and just hiring always the same people and all of this. So, people of color and women, we are having so many opportunities right now because of that. And I feel like we are taking it and we are honoring it, and we are not trying to, attack anybody or anything. We are just like reclaiming our spot. And I think that this is that's one of the reasons why this is happening in Boston, for being such a conservative place, and the diversity is growing every time more. So so I feel like it's coming from the outside as well.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a new willingness to have really difficult conversations and look internally as well. Been impressed with some institutions and organizations looking back And I think that I've also started to think deeply about being okay with saying the wrong thing, or thinking and then like trying to try to create moments, but also create space in which we can work it out. Like, that's what I'm seeing. Things are like, we're trying to work it out. We're trying to talk to one another. We're trying to figure out, like what space should be used for who, and what does that word should mean anyway. And I think for me, an example, to be able to actually talk to Allison and Michael and the Esplanade Association and saying, this is what I've noticed from the Hatch Shell. We have a history here of white male European composers being celebrated in this space. I also see Esplanade Association, you're starting the Ground Beat series in collaboration with BAMS Fest. Like, I had a moment of feeling empowered to create a narrative that would empower my colleagues and myself, because I saw an organization that was taking steps to do that as well. So I feel like that those, even if you think small steps are happening, small steps are having a big impact because they're creating space to have difficult conversations, or kind of like work through history and work through like kind of icky feelings, for lack of a better word. That's the word I use with my toddler often. But I think that, I've lived in Boston for about a decade, and I've been a learner, just as I've been a kind of catalyst for some of this work. And we have a long way to go. We have a very long way to go. But I feel like the work that I've been able to, collaborate with all of these wonderful people online today is showing that we're kind of taking those steps.
I appreciate that. Having hard conversation is more necessary than ever if we're going to move forward, period, in a city like Boston and beyond. The days of being exclusive are over. The days of space being only for certain people is over. It is about building community, about building long-lasting relationships, about one race, one people, one belief, one movement. And so I hear you all very loudly and clearly as you're sharing in how Boston is opening up and what it does take. And it takes more than what people realize. Listening. That's one of the key skills, is just listening to the stories, listening to the lived experiences. So thank you. Anita, of course, I got a question from the audience for you.
Yes.
You launched a new business aimed at supporting placemakers and placekeepers. What's a tip you've got for anyone managing a space in Boston about how to facilitate a vibrant, equitable, and flourishing place?
I think it's really important to understand the community, understand where your location sits. Also paying respect to the history of the transition of cultures within that space. I think it's key and integral to be connected with not only organizational stakeholders, but generational leaders in the community to really understand the nuances of what it means to create, maintain, and support space and businesses and artists and creatives. And so I think, for me, I live in Roxbury and am grounded in the work that I'm doing here. And I think the nuances of some of that is because I'm immersed in this community and have a love and respect for the community. So I think in order to do that, you really need to immerse yourself and have a respect and understand that you are, not only are you becoming a part, but you're helping to create. So that's my response.
I appreciate that. And it's important, again, for the audience, there's a lot of gems or knowledge dropping here. So I'm hoping everyone is taking note. Just for fun, can any of you think of a behind the scenes moment that was like a wow factor for you? Whether it's Nubian Nights or Hatch, just thinking about in general, where you're like, that's it.
I think for me, I remember when we first projected on Nubian when Maria and I were there just running a test. And as soon as we saw for the first time the video projected and we went outside, we were like, whoa, because it doesn't look the same from inside, like the special screen that we used. It looks way brighter if you're outside. And we were just inside, putting the projectors, everything. And then we went outside. I was like, wow. And I had been editing and, it's so small in my computer. So I was like, I don't know if it's going to be great, but suddenly we saw it and we were like, wow, this is going to be so good. And, that was only one window. So also seeing the 4 of them, and when people came in for the first time, I think that was very special for me.
And the way that the hatch shell, the shellac on the hatch shell just sparkled when we were running those tests, and we had that moment of realizing like, oh my gosh, this is going to look like a glittery snow globe of light in the middle of all of this. It was so beautiful. I think another one of those moments for me was during the design process when Maria sent the first clip of the music to us. And it was still in draft form, but you could feel the swell of emotions throughout the piece that she had composed. And it brought tears to my eyes. And I shared it with the rest of our staff and heard from other people, like, I'm at my desk crying. It was so emotional and so beautiful in this year where we were feeling so many negative emotions to just get swept up in this musical piece. And we only had sort of the conceptual images of what Hatched might look like, but to imagine standing there in the middle of the Hatch lawn with it unfolding in front of you and this beautiful musical arrangement composed by so many different people in different places at home remotely and being stitched together into this beautiful tapestry of sound was just incredible to be a part of. And I think our staff and our board really loved being a part of the design process too, and getting to experience that, and Maria and Pamela's creative process.
What about Nubian Nights, Anita? What was that wow moment?
Yeah, I also shed tears. It's the second mention, but when they started the redesign of the Bolin building, and they took all except the facade, the front facade down, it really felt like we were gutted, right? In the community, it just was off-putting a little bit. And to take a moment and to step back and to see the beauty in the musicians and what Maria and Pamela had put together, and to very much see Roxbury front and center in that magnificentness, to know that there was going to be trickle down effects of benefit, and then to see people laughing on the street together and appreciating the sounds and the sights. And it was just, it just filled you up. And to know that this is just the start, right? This is just a tip of what is possible. And it's just so exciting, this moment, to be in this space at this very moment.
I can feel that as you all are talking, and this actually leads into this next question that comes from the audience. That there seems to be, at least from these design week sessions that are happening, that there's this impression about Boston being a leader in creative placemaking, and that it's inclusive and embraces diverse communities of participants. For any one of you, is this experience being documented in a way that could go on the road, that could be a teachable moment for people who may be interested in this industry, but also being able to use the methodologies or the best practices you have to implement even in their own neighborhood? Is that even happening?
From the angle of my creative process, I'm actually about to engage on Monday. I designed a 3-week intensive for the Boston Conservatory at Berkeley that's called Beyond Walls: Performance in the Public Space. So I'm about to teach 70 students, and most of them are first and second year dancers, theater actors and directors and musicians, on how to create art, how to think of themselves as creators for the public space. So this is the first time an institution has asked me to engage as an educator really with this idea of creative placemaking. How do we how do we empower our students to see themselves beyond the concert hall or the theatrical stage. So we're partnering with the Emerald Necklace Conservancy, and there will be a performance that will be totally student-led, created, everything logistically created by the students with kind of myself and a couple of other faculty members. So I'm excited to kind of run with that. Like, how can we build this into our education systems? How can we implode this idea of what an artist is and who they can engage with and how partnerships kind of are created? And so I'm pretty excited about that. If you're around the Boston area on May 28th in the Back Bay Fens, there will be about 70 fantastic creators creating something that I don't know what it's going to be yet.
Pamela, Anita, how is this work being documented? How can this be shared, as the examples for all communities?
Well, I feel like just with Hatched, we were able to have so much press, and so this got to many people, and now it's there on the record, so that's documented. And I feel like with the support of so many people that have come and asked us to do more projects with them, I think that this is a way of expanding it already. And I think that it would be a wonderful idea actually to take, if we can, this show, or if not, something similar, so we can do maybe a workshop, Maria, I don't know, like teach all the all the tech and everything to other cities, expanding in this way, and just like sharing all of this for other people to share it. Like, imagine it's just like this chain that would be wonderful to see. And there's like, technology is more accessible now. It's not that complicated really. Like, I feel if you have your heart in the right place, you can learn any skill. And I think that being within a team that is respectful and supportive, I think that's also like a very important key for this. But yes, like let's make more community.
And just from a project manager perspective, if anyone wants roadmap templates, budget templates, we love spreadsheets, we love collaborative documents. I think just sharing these tools are great ways to bring those opportunities elsewhere, to give people the tools that they can use to plug in their own dreams and their own budgets and come up with their own Hatched in their own communities and parks, and bring people to those parks and bring their communities together in ways that we were able to do on the Esplanade.
Yes, sharing is caring.
And I would love to see the work of Anita, Allison, Catherine, Michael. Like, I feel that, let's step back, because I think the answer to the question is, we actually needed your work on the national platform. And I don't know if it is yet. And I think it should be. So I just want to say that out loud, that the work that you as placemakers are doing, and the people really like on the ground making the projects happen, is incredible. And let us know how we can scream that from the rooftops, because we need you so deeply. And I want the world to know. I apologize that I don't know specifically how to make that happen.
Oh, I'll reach out to you. Don't worry about it. I already got 10 projects ready for you. Of course. Apparently, it looks like there's a question for me. Interesting. Normally, there's never one for the moderator, but it's all right. I love you all too. And I'm going to use this as kind of partly a wrap-up question. Bandstand has quickly emerged as a powerhouse at creating opportunities for creative entrepreneurs in all manner of public spaces. Thank you, love you. What does placemaking mean to you? That's an interesting question. It's a very loaded question given Boston's history, I will say. I think for me, just being a native, being a resident, being a fan of creative people, I can whistle. That's as far as I'm going to get in my creative talent. For me, it's almost paying homage to the nostalgia side of Boston while acknowledging our present and envisioning the future. Like that is my formula. That's always been my thing around how to acknowledge the shoulders that I stand on that got me here, how to recognize the elders who hold the information that help me understand are present, and then how can I envision that my son and his friends or today's generation and their friends and everyone else can benefit from radical imagination. That for me is what placemaking means, particularly in a city like Boston, given its history, given that cultural programming in the 80s and 90s is going to look totally different now because of technology and the vibrancy and all the creative and intelligentsia that comes to the table to radicalize ideas that almost challenge the status quo and dominant culture. I love to get in good trouble. That's just how I feel about it. And placemaking allows me to do that unapologetically while still being a fan, while still being able to ensure that joy is prioritized, that humility and human connection is always at the foundation of what makes Boston, Boston. Wanting to get back to that through placemaking and placekeeping is very, very important to me. And I think with Bandfest as an organization, we're doing that on our own terms. We're not waiting for anybody. We'll ask for forgiveness later, but it's allowed us to get to this place where we're here to stay. We're a cultural movement. We are about the people. We're about the ideas that are going to shape and shift and hold us accountable to each other and the spaces that we deem hold us firm, mind, body, and soul. Sorry, y'all gonna get this ancestral knowledge right now. Wow, okay. Let me check myself. Okay, so I do have one other question that's probably more specific to the Kendall area, which is right across from the Esplanade. It has, so much potential. It's definitely got sponsors, as we all know, where Kendall sits. But it's been relatively deserted to some degree, especially during the pandemic. And one of our audience members would like to know, have any of you heard of anything, any plans or thoughts for doing any artistic installation or events that could really bring people to that space? No?
That's a great question. There's a little bit of a maybe if you build it, they will come kind of thing that might happen in those neighborhoods with so much construction going on, with the Austin I-90 multimodal project being led by MassDOT and the Federal Highway Department coming to really change that area, with, I believe, Harvard having bought so much of the land over there. We'll see what kind of neighborhood pops up overnight with that construction. But I think for organizations and individuals like those gathered here tonight to be able to get in at the ground floor as these design processes are happening, to keep an ear out, to listen, to be engaged in those design processes and make sure that the community's hopes and dreams are being built in from the ground level, will provide that platform for art projects in those neighborhoods in the future.
Absolutely. And I think with that, just leaving this with all of you all, momentum only takes two people. So find someone who's willing to follow you, treat them with love and kindness, and you'd be surprised who follows you with your vision and what you want to do in elevating space in your community. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Michael. Great to see you.
What a wonderful panel. I, of course, would hate to start by disagreeing with Catherine right off the bat, but I think momentum in Catherine's case and the case of all of you that were on the panel can start with one person. And I think you've all shown that you can catalyze some pretty wonderful things and get people to follow you. And so Speaking of literally following you, I would invite everyone to keep up with all the great work being done by those who are on the panel tonight. As you see their social media handles here, along with our partner and convener this week, the Boston Design Week. Thank you to Boston Design Week. If it's terrible in the Zoom setting that you guys can't get the round of applause that you deserve. So if I'm the only one that does it, I will be happy to do it. Thank you so much to Allison, to Maria, to Anita, to Pamela, and of course to our moderator, Catherine. An absolute treat to hear from the five of you for the past hour. As we mentioned at the beginning, we did record tonight's session, and so we will be happy to make it available as soon as possible on the Esplanade Association YouTube page and through our social media, and we'll make it available to those who participated. But again, we thank Boston Design Week for having us here. For any of you that want to follow up with any of tonight's panelists, please see their social media handles there. But we couldn't appreciate your participation more. Get out there and make some places wonderful in Boston, and thank you for joining us tonight.